This is Creative Banter. We're back with Ben in this episode, starting off by discussing human psychology when it comes to amusement park lines and high school fights. This leads to a short discussion on the current state of bullying in schools and how it has continued to change in drastic manners. We speak on my new website and ebook, as well as how we organize our photo galleries, expanding on the discussion had with Murray the previous week. Finally, we answer a few questions from listeners on the Discord about fountain pens and how design principles help in the crafting of strong compositions. Let's dive right into it, shall we?
My allergies are starting to act up now that the weather's getting nicer.
Yeah, welcome to spring.
Yeah, really. This doesn't feel like spring, though. Like, I think it's like 90 degrees outside today.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize you would have temperatures like that this time of year. That's crazy.
We're not supposed to. Like, looking at my weather app right now, it's been in like the mid to high 80s all week.
I'm jealous of that. That's like my favorite temperature range. I'm like a lizard. When it gets warm outside, I get more active versus...
I just don't like it because it's like we get the humidity right alongside of it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, that's
it's
definitely not a great thing.
It's not like it's a nice weather or a nice warmth. It's like overbearing.
Yeah.
And it's really bad when like my college, they don't have the capability or the infrastructure to switch from heat to AC like real quick on a whim without like blowing up the school. So they sent out an email and they're like, due to the heat wave, please dress like appropriately for the unexpected amounts of warmth within the school district or within the school, knowing that we can't change this stuff. Like, there's nothing we can do about it.
Huh.
So it's just overbearing right now. Like I said, it's like 88 degrees outside today in the second week of April. And then next week, it's dropping down to like the 60s.
Oh.
So I don't know. I'm good with warm weather during months when I expect it. But I would rather not deal with this right now.
Yeah. My wife and I, we went to Disneyland and to California Adventure it was on Monday and Tuesday, and then we're recording this on a Thursday. So the weather was fantastic when we were there. It was really nice. So when it got to be, 1, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, it started getting a little warm if you're kind of out in the sun, but it was really nice. But originally we were going to be going there back in February, but that's the exact same time that there was this big winter storm that was going through that resulted in like some snow falling in very small amounts in Disneyland. So we were able to have the nice weather this time around. So it was fun. And actually while we were there, one of the rides we did was, have you been to Disneyland, by the way?
I've been to the Florida one. So what is that, Disney World?
Well, here there's Disneyland and there's California Adventure. And one of the attractions at California Adventure, it's Cars themed from Pixar. And it's really fascinating because they have the whole area set up with like, it looks like you're in Utah with all the like the sandstone and stuff. And it's amazing what kind of details they put into it. And you can tell that they were legitimately studying like pictures of areas in Utah because like the color palettes they used for all the various layers of sandstone, the textures, and they even painted on some areas of lichen. And when you get close to it, you see that it's painted on. But if you're even like a couple of feet away from it, like you look at that and it looks legitimately like something in Utah. And we'd been on that one last time was in, I think, 2016, but it was kind of fun going there and just looking at all the details. And also the reason we had so much time to look at it is because the ride broke down. So it was, we're in line a long time, but it's so cool what they're able to do there, and just to make everything such a very immersive environment.
Yeah, like I said, I've never been over over to that one. And the last time that I was down in Florida for Disney World was I was in 3rd grade. So
It goes back a little ways.
yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't remember much about that. I mean, like the elevator. There's some elevator ride of
Tower of Terror is what it was, which that has been rebranded as
Guardians
of the Galaxy now, which is really well done. They have that one in California Adventure as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I remember that one, and then obviously like the castle, the princess castle or whatever, and then going to breakfast with some of the characters.
Yeah.
Where they had some of the characters walking around. But other than that, I don't remember much about it, and I don't necessarily care to go back.
Yeah. Well, it's especially because in Florida you got the heat and humidity, which is just as you were talking about earlier. Which thankfully we don't have as much of that here in Southern California. There is one ride though. I don't know if I don't know if they have Pirates of the Caribbean in the one in Florida, or if you even remember that. But there was
I don't remember.
There was one time when we were going to go on that, and the way that the line works on that one, there's like this sort of you go underneath this little pedestrian bridge. You go underneath this pedestrian bridge, and then there's 2 lines. One goes to the right, one goes to the left. They kind of wind around, they kind of loop around, and then they all go into the same entrance into the building that's above. And when we're walking past it, you look down and you see that one side, like the left side, has a line there, but the right side is wide open. So you're like, all right, well, they just only have half of it open right now. Just because there wasn't a big crowd at the time. But as we were walking into it, we saw people walking in both lines. And at a certain point, they were only going to the left. They weren't going to the right. And to get to the left, they're kind of like walking next to this little narrow gap between a trash can and the chain, but no one was going to the right. And it was a fascinating look at human psychology, because everyone was simply following each other, even though they were clearly going a way that was not intended. And no one was thinking to themselves, well, why don't we just go to the right? Yeah. And so we just looked at it and we're like, why are all these people just like cutting through this area next to this trash can to go to the left? And we're like, well, the right's open too. Let's go to the right. And then we just walked basically all the way to the very front of that right line and got on the ride in probably less than a minute. And then everyone followed us. So it reminded me a little bit of how there is this effect on social media where everyone is doing so much of, well, they're paying attention to what everyone else is doing. They want to kind of follow the crowd and this and that. Yet they're not doing the simple things such as, I don't know, thinking for themselves, maybe being observant, all that sort of stuff. So I think there's a little life lesson in that experience to be observant, to think for yourself, and to not follow the crowd, because sometimes it just leads to a really long line.
You see a lot of that at the high school that I'm student teaching at. Like today, we just had there was like a fight or a scuffle or whatever you want to call it. I didn't pay attention to it because I didn't go out into the hallway. But down the hall from the classroom, there was one, and you just had like a 5-minute delay from kids trying to get to class but couldn't, and because you had like the whole hallway was filled with kids that were like not participating in the fight, because realistically it was probably like 2 kids, but they were all like, oh, I want to get a video kind of thing. And like the culture within this school of like fights and video is crazy, because like you have this this one student that came in because there was a fight yesterday, and there's a fight every day somewhere in the school because it's just the environment.
Yeah.
But one student was like, came into class super irritated because she couldn't get a good video of the fight.
Oh my gosh.
And then like whenever there is a fight, it's obviously like posted among like Instagram or social media or whatever. And like if it's what's deemed as like a good fight, it's shared like throughout the class, like within the class. Like they're constantly talking about it.
That's insane.
And just like right alongside the lines of like following along with the crowd of like even kids that you wouldn't expect them to be interested in a fight that is ultimately meaningless, they're like so engrossed with it. It's just fascinating to see.
I'm so glad that none of that existed back when I went to high school. There weren't cell phones in the same way. There, no video, nothing of that sort of stuff. And man, I would not want to be going through school right now as a kid. It just, I don't know. It seems it was so much simpler back then.
I mean, my mom even said that back when I was going through high school and I was like getting bullied here and there. Her biggest thing was like, it wasn't as big of a deal to get bullied at school as it is today.
Yeah.
Like back when she was at school, because like you would go to school, okay, you kept your head down, you get bullied, whatever. But at least you could get away from it the second that you're outside of school.
Yeah.
Like at most, the kids would like follow you home or whatever. But even then, that was rare. But now it's like most of it isn't even true, like fights or fist fights or bullying in any kind of verbal confrontation. Most of it is just online harassment and online bullying, like cyberbullying.
Oh, man.
And it's just like, yeah, for the school that I'm at, yeah, there's physical fights. But for most other schools, like the one that I attended, it was like a lot of just online harassment. Like there was some physical stuff, and then to add on to that, you couldn't escape it because you come home, you'd think that you were okay, you'd hop onto Instagram to see some funny cat videos, and it'd be like, nope, you get bullied instead.
Yeah, and it's just when also when people are just using that for like fuel for their own, causes, for their own popularity and all that kind of stuff. Or it's, yeah, man, that's a curse on society right there. That's not good.
Yeah, I mean it's rough, but
it trains them for the real world, unfortunately.
Yeah, I guess so.
Same thing goes on a larger scale.
Yeah, same thing goes on if you want a YouTube channel.
Yeah, well, exactly. Unless you make
Trolls
really boring videos that trolls don't even bother watching, which is kind of my expertise.
Yeah, there you go. That's the trick. Make really boring videos. No clickbait titles.
Yeah.
Don't do any kind of ad revenue, because that way YouTube won't push your videos at all.
Yeah. And they'll never find them. That's my secret. I'm sticking to it.
Yeah, that's one way to go about it. But in other words, brighten things up a little bit maybe. My new website launched.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I did that. I kind of was forced to do it, but nonetheless, it's done this past weekend. So, new website is officially live.
Cool. I'm checking it out right now.
With all of its fun mishaps or glory, whatever you want to call it. It's still got some work to be done to it. Some things here and there, SEO things that I might want to add in and stuff like that, just to help out a little. But for the most part, I'm okay with it.
Cool. Yeah, I see the podcast link there, the newsletter, the about, your articles. Very cool.
Yeah, I'm still not sure how I want to do my galleries. Like right now, I have them in really 3 separate pages, gallery pages. And then obviously a gallery page for more recent work.
Mm-hmm.
But I was talking in what would be last week's episode, which I recorded this past Monday, and timelines are weird right now.
Yeah.
But episode 48, I talked with Murray Livingston.
Oh, cool.
And we were talking a little bit about like how you organize galleries and everything and portfolios and such. And I was thinking about like how I could organize these things, because he asked how I ultimately came to it, and really it was just a matter of like what fit together best, but trying to like distinguish between my gallery arboreal wonders versus intimate landscapes, when they're both technically intimate.
Yeah, there's a lot of shared common ground between them.
Exactly. And so I'm in between. Like I like what Simon Baxter does with his, where it's just a single gallery and it's just his 36 photographs in that. But then you have the issue of like, well, now that's just 36 photographs that you have on your page that you're being judged by.
Yeah.
And like, you're not really showing a very broad range of your skills and abilities. But then you also have someone like Alex Noriega,
Mm-hmm.
and I've really been enjoying Alex's site recently.
He just released some new work too.
Yes, he did. He lays things out in like a yearly basis. So it'll be like he has a personal favorites gallery, and then he has a gallery for each year, going back to, I think, 2010 or something like that, or 2013. And then within these galleries, he has it split up for each of the seasons. It's a really clean presentation, really simplistic. And so I'm just debating if I want to go more of that route or keep with like the separated galleries as like a thematic thing, even though I don't really work in themes that much.
Yeah.
Like there's pros and cons to each, because like I don't work in themes that much or collections. But at the same time, doing it yearly, is it enough to show like, oh, I didn't photograph any this winter, but I've photographed like 4 this summer and 2 in the fall and 1 in the spring, and here's my 6 photographs for the year.
Yeah, and I mean, I can definitely see advantages to the year-based approach, because also you can look back through that artist's work and you can get a feeling for the growth, the development, the changes, any sort of nuances in style and such that you're able to notice based on seeing that progression. Yeah, so I mean that's pretty good. Obviously, it gets to be a little bit more difficult when you may not have quite as many images to put in there. My approach has been to have them theme based, but also to say the year that they were photographed in, so you get a little bit of that sense. But I don't know, as I get more and more images, at some point the system kind of falls short a little bit, because I don't want the galleries to have too many images in them. And I find myself mostly just unpublishing some of the older ones I may not enjoy quite as much, or maybe they just don't fit in quite as well. So maybe there's some sort of solution I can find that offers some combination of them, and I'm not quite sure what that is. I do know I need to. I was actually last night going through and adding the most recent image from my Death Valley trip, and I was putting it in one of the categories. I think I was putting in the small scenes, but then I was looking at the one I have, which is I just call it Calm Waters. There's only a handful of pictures in there. I'm like, I really need to just make that into something else, because that's kind of like the weakest of the galleries I have on there. Mm-hmm. So maybe making it like a autumn themed or something like that, which I have a lot of, and that way I can split up some of the images that are in the trees area. But yeah, it's always a challenge to figure out how to organize the work, especially as the work evolves and changes through the years.
Yeah, I mean, I think I mentioned it in the past episode, but I think your work would fit really well to organize it in like kind of like Alex's.
Yeah.
But to do it like, so for each year you have your trips and you have your trip breakdowns. So even if that looks like you have a gallery for each year, and then within that you have galleries for each trip, and it's broken down like that, or if it's like you have 1 year and just like how Alex does it, you, instead of the seasons, you just have like Zion, winter Zion, and then going down through that. I think that's probably one of the best ways that you could do it.
Yeah.
At least that I can think of right now. And really just because, I mean, you are known for your YouTube videos and working in that way.
Associated with the trips and all that.
Exactly. So, I mean, I could see you doing it like Alex, and you have a gallery for, say, 2023. And within that, you have it broken down into even just little sections within one page with each trip designated. And then underneath that, you could even have like a link directly to the playlist for those videos. So if somebody stumbles upon your work through like organic search of you or whatever, they can go and be like, oh, this guy has a YouTube channel, and be able to see where those images come from and go along that journey. I think would be a really great way of doing it. Yeah,
and I do have a video journal archive page, which has links to all the playlists through the years. And I've had that one mostly just as a way to have a collection of those playlists. Because on YouTube itself, the playlists are kind of buried in there. It's hard to have one page that shows everything. But I also like the idea of when you go to a person's website to have them have the galleries, kind of like how I have them now, where it's organized by theme. But I feel like you need to have two, coexisting systems for the galleries where if a person is not too familiar with the work, they can click on it based on theme and look at all the images, but maybe also have a secondary gallery, kind of like what you're mentioning, where it's organized by year and then the trips within it. I just don't think a gallery like that would display as well on the front page of a website. I think just a person browsing, they're like, oh, I feel like looking at some winter pictures. Here you go, or stuff along those lines, which doesn't involve too much thinking power. But maybe I should have a separate section that has, I guess, kind of like a collection of all the stuff, and that way I could also have the pictures, links to the videos, maybe a link to the Unpolished series from that particular trip, just to tie it all together. So that probably would be a smart move, and sounds like a summer project for me.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that, though, that separation of like having one for collections or themes and one for like a year, so to speak. TJ Thorne does that.
Was it based on the year or based on the collection? That's both. Everything? Yeah.
Like if you go on to tjthornephotography.com/gallery, he has it split, so you can either view by collections and themes, or you can view by photos by year.
Yeah, that's a smart way to go. That's why it's good that we do this podcast, because it's a brainstorming session for me. I don't know about you how it is for you, but it's a brainstorming session for me. Yeah.
Absolutely. This is just selfish reasons. Yeah. This is just us talking each week, and so we somehow have a bunch of people listening to it that keep coming back for whatever reason. Yeah. So.
and also it's because of our conversations that I came up with the Unpolished ebook series. And actually I had another person had a suggestion about that series, and they said, since you take the time to write the monologue for the start of each video series, you should just have like the one of the first pages in the ebook should just be the text of the monologue, just to kind of tie into it. I'm like, that's a really good idea. I mean, the work's already done. I just, just type it in there. So I think everything when it integrates, I think makes it for a very, very unique experience to view the same sort of thing, but in different ways.
Yeah, and speaking on ebooks and going back a little bit to the website launch, obviously I have a bunch of plans for my website going further with, like we talked about, weekly articles and everything, probably starting up next week. But I also launched my A Morning Walk Norts Resort ebook.
Oh, very cool.
That is out there for free. If you go onto my website, there's a little banner at the top. And if you scroll down to the footer as well, there's a little section for ebooks that you can download it. So that's out there in the world.
Awesome.
That's another thing that I'm like, just have to get it out there and see what happens. I'm sure I'll update it here and there a little bit as I learn better things within Affinity Publisher and different software for making it nicer. But yeah, I figured I may as well go the free route with it and see what happens.
Yeah.
Doesn't hurt.
Well, that's exciting.
Yeah, all good stuff. I just now have to get into the nitty-gritty work of keeping up with the podcast section, because now that's organized as like a blog section instead. Makes things a little bit easier for people to go onto the page and see like the topic breakdowns and everything. And then make sure that I keep up with that. Make sure I keep up with writing essays each week for the rest of this year. And I'm going to be doing my newsletter as a monthly newsletter, changing things around quite a bit. I have plans in place that's seeing where they go. I'm not quite sure if they will formulate into anything fantastic like I hope they would, but we'll see.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the great things about doing this sort of thing, because you can kind of try a bunch of different avenues, and then as you're doing that, you figure out what works well, what doesn't work well, you learn from it, and I think it's just when you're just testing the boundaries and testing the edges and trying to figure all that out. I think that's when things start to come together. So I think that'll be pretty cool. And it's awesome that you have your website up.
Yeah. And I also have a donate button for the ebook in case anybody wants to donate. Like, I don't know. I think we have enough viewers or listeners on here that if everybody donates like $10, let me double check this price here. I'd say like $10 will do it. If everybody donates $10, I can buy myself the new Leica M11 monochrome that's now available today.
Yeah.
If everybody donates, let's see what do I need. So I need $15,000 for that plus the 50mm lens that just came out. So if we have like 600 viewers, my math is terrible. So I'm going to say like if everybody donates $100, I'm good.
Yeah. You're just...
And then I've got it.
Yes.
Yeah. Then I'd be able to get that. So I will expect those donations coming in the coming weeks. I appreciate them. And I will do absolutely nothing to get more of them. It's just the ebook. You get a free ebook for $100.
That sounds like a fantastic deal.
Yes, I definitely.
Yeah.
No, but really this M11 I've been waiting for, like, to see it come out, and it looks really nice.
Yeah, I saw the news about that on DP Review, and
DP Review. Did they actually publish something on there? Because they're like shut down at this point.
I think they were still keeping things a little bit updated in terms of. I get the feeling there's something going on in the background in terms of.
There's got to be because like they were supposed to shut down on the 10th of April was like their official shutdown date, and then they announced that, oh yeah, guys, we're officially like being archived, so it's going to be available. But then you go on and there's still, I mean, probably not as many as there used to be, but still posts.
Yeah, as of 7 hours ago, as we're recording this.
Yeah.
But I mean, it seems like it's such I see how it's very easy for a company like Amazon to say, hey, this isn't the direction we want to go. We just want to kill it off. That's it. It's easier for them just to do that. But at the same point, it would seem like it's in the best interest of all the various camera companies, Canon, Nikon, Fuji, Sony, everyone, that a site like that exists. So it would seem like there is definitely a lot of demand, and I would not be surprised if something happens, something goes through, and they're able to buy it off Amazon or just take it over or whatever. If Amazon's just happy enough to wipe their hands clean of it.
Yeah, especially because Amazon has their own like online server. In terms of like they have, what is it, AWS or something like that.
Yeah.
That competes with WordPress as like some of the best servers for shit. So like I don't understand how much could it actually cost you to run DP Review?
Yeah. Well, it's like
Google,
they'll kind of do something for a while, then they'll just, say, hey, it's not the direction we want to go right now. And they'll just cut it off. Cause I think it's very easy for them to do that. But hopefully there's something going on. Cause I've always enjoyed DP Review. Back when I used to work at the camera store, I would always check DP Review each day just to see what was going on. Cause people would certainly come in if there was some new camera announced or something like that. So, so I guess we'll see what happens.
Yeah. I mean, I know that a lot of places right now are either trying to archive it before the announcement that it is going to be archived. There's also Photography Life just started up their forum. So they're trying to like at least not necessarily replace what was there, but give another option for people that are exiting from DP Review by no choice of their own. Yeah. So, I mean, it's, I don't get it. I don't understand it, but it is what it is, I guess.
Yeah.
It's just unfortunate, but.
Yeah. So do we have any questions or topics or anything from the Discord at all?
Oh, we have plenty.
Nice.
We have plenty that we have not gotten around to.
We're good at that.
Yeah. So, let's start off with this one from Calvin. He asks, have you guys ever considered using fountain pens, as in another analog hobby, in your writing? He said that he's found it to help his creativity by putting literal pen to paper. He was also asking, would you you in particular, Ben, ever consider incorporating that into your work more generally, especially with your Unpolished series, where you feature your handwritten notes?
That's a good question. I know people that are very they love fountain pens. They love all that. I guess I've never really tried it. I've never really experienced it in order to fully understand why it is that people do enjoy it so much. So I've never really thought about it. I've never tried it, but I see how it could be a rather interesting experience. When I'm in the field, it's more so I just need to jot this stuff down quickly, because I mean, when I was in Death Valley, there's times when like the wind was blowing and I'm like trying to hold down the page while like writing on it, so the page isn't getting all like, whipped around in the wind. So in some of those senses, perhaps it might be a little bit more of a distraction, but I can see if you're really trying to have the full experience, I do see how that would perhaps be more rewarding.
I have one. I have a fountain pen from, I think it's Lamy. It's a German company.
Mm-hmm.
Gotten it years and years and years ago. I think my girlfriend got it for me for like a birthday or anniversary or something. Not the most expensive pen in the world. I know that fountain pens very easily go like thousands or hundreds of dollars. I was using it quite a bit when I first got it, and then kind of fell off from using it, just because it's a process, just like with 4x5.
Yeah.
Like, it's so much easier. For right now, I'm doing notes for this episode and jotting down things as we go, and I'm using just a pencil, like a wooden pencil.
Yeah.
I could definitely pull out the fountain pen and use that, and it would probably be relatively easy, but then it's loading up the ink, and it's a process of using it. And I don't really do a lot of handwriting where it would be appropriate for me to use one. Like, it's not like I'm taking the fountain pen to school to write bathroom passes to the kids.
Yeah.
Like, it's not going to happen. Perhaps if I start handwriting my essays more, because I always like that hand-to-mind connection that you get more when physically writing something rather than typing on a computer.
Yeah, for sure.
That's always seems to be helpful for as I'm working through ideas. But perhaps at that point, I think actually my sister picked up one for me from this thrift store that's like a fancy looking knockoff one or something, but I haven't touched that much. But I think it's the same thing as using like a typewriter too, or at least similar thing of using like analog technology for that.
Yeah.
So it's one of those deals where there's such a process around using it that it can be inhibitive or prohibitive of getting the work done in the manner that you want to get it done.
Yeah. I mean, I can see how if it's the sort of thing where, throwing a record on a record player and it's all about kind of the experience and the ritual of it all. And if a person is really just concentrating on their handwriting and want that experience of working with, I can see how that would perhaps put one in a different mindset. But maybe it's something I should try at some point. But I don't know. I think just using the old Pilot G2 gel pen I use has been sufficient. Yeah,
like I said, I'm either like number 2 wooden pencils lately. If I'm taking notes from books in my little journal, I'll use just a mechanical pencil.
Yeah.
And then for most of the time through school, I'm just using with these little these 207 Uniball Signos or whatever they are. I mean, I know that there's a photographer. I think he's actually working with Michael Strickland right now. David King Rowe IV. And his handwriting, I've mentioned it before on the podcast, but it is beautiful handwriting. And I believe he uses a fountain pen for it. But again, process.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
All right, what else do we got? One of the more recent ones from Andrew. He's asking if Ben uses any... he says, I wonder which, if any, design principles Ben finds himself drawing upon from his career in graphic design. I'm sure these are now fully innate and may not be consciously used, but he may sense some aspects reappearing in his work.
I think when it comes to graphic design, and I never worked in it. I just went to school for it and then got the job at the camera store. But that being said, with all the graphic design stuff, it's all about organizing things in a order of importance in a pleasing way. And that's really what it comes down to. I think it comes down to spacing. I mean, one of the things I loved doing with graphic design was working with type. And if I had to do like a type only design, I would just love that. And there's so much creative stuff you can do with it. But a lot of that was just a matter of making sure that there weren't any like distractions, and make sure that the eye went to what it's supposed to, or at least what I thought was most important, and to from there to what's less important. I think that's what it is. I think it's just a spatial awareness. I think it's colors. I think it's textures. But just generally, I think it comes down to the organization of subjects within a composition. And I think that's one of the main things that I've at least see as a correlation between the two of those. So that's at least how I see it that way.
Yeah, I think that spacing idea is definitely, that I've picked up from you, has been very, very helpful in my photography. Especially working with a 4x5, having that ground glass and using the first squares or first half squares around the ground glass as spacers to allow breathing room. That's certainly one of the best things that I found you could do to make sure that you have a composition that doesn't give off a ton of tension and chaos unless you intend for it to.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the whole thing, when things are purposeful. And when you know the visual tools in your arsenal in terms of conveying certain things with regard to the spacing. There was actually I was going through some of my photos. I think it was from my fall trip. And I was noticing there were some very strong similarities between quite a few of my compositions on that trip. And I finally narrowed it down to a compositional, it's not a rule. I'm not going to say a rule, because that makes it sound like the rule of thirds and that kind of thing, but like a way of composing things that I very much adhere to. And it's, so if you were to draw a rectangle representing the just the aspect ratio, so I'm doing a 4x5, rather than drawing an X, diagonally from corner to corner, if you were to have two lines that are offset a little bit, so they just miss the corner, and then you have them going the other way, it ends up being kind of like the rule of thirds, but turned 45 degrees, but where you have 4 lines, 2 running diagonal each way, but just missing the corner, one a bit above, one a bit below. But I find that this sort of diagonal X that it creates is something that so many of my photos pertain to, because I try to avoid having things going right to a corner. But I'm going to make a video at this at some point, maybe when I get back from my spring trip. But it was kind of interesting how so many of my compositions all fit within this exact same thing. And I think that is something that comes from all the design stuff I did in the past, and just trying to minimize any sort of distractions. I don't know if any of that makes sense, but I'll do a video on that at some point, because it's one of those overarching themes I find among so many of the images that I shoot. And I think it comes from the graphic design stuff.
Yeah, that idea of things sticking in corners and coming out of corners was, I really first heard it at a workshop, the only workshop that I've ever gone to, because it was free for me. So that helped. Yeah. But one of the instructors went ahead and was discussing that idea that, again, of like tension that it brings into the scene, into the composition. I'm not wanting things to just come out and appear from corners, even though it could be really like easy to take it if you're photographing a solo branch of a tree, to have it come out from that corner. It's just because it fits.
It ends up just becoming, it attracts more attention to itself, which takes away from the rest of the composition. And so it's one of those things where I think a lot of people that's the solution that they find at first, but then you end up having like this foreground of some sort or whatever it is that's going right to the corner, and it sucks your eye right to that in a rather unsettling way, and it looks a bit contrived. So there's all kinds of little tips like that.
I also think it's funny though, like you mentioned, all of your photographs kind of follow a single general pattern. Looking at it like that. Yet you always hear, and I've heard Nick Carver talk about this a lot too, because a lot of his compositions, he's centering his subjects quite a bit. But you always hear like, oh, it's so bad to be following the same ritual. It's so bad to center your subjects all the time. And you're like, well, it's working for you. It's working for Nick. Like, I think it's more of a matter of, yes, understand the quote unquote rules of composition, what makes a photograph pleasing to the eye and what works nicely for it. And then learn what works for you. Yeah. I mean, like, ultimately, if your idea is just to create art that's self-expressive, then who is to tell you that you need to follow some specific rules that were made up and only existed because some mathematician decided so? Like, at the end of the day, you have to be happy with the work that you're making. And if that means that you're centering your subjects all the time in every photograph, well, who cares? Like,
exactly. And I think it comes down to, if you do things with purpose, that is more important than doing things just for the sake of doing that thing because of some, odd numbered tips and tricks video that you happen to see on YouTube. It's always odd numbers, by the way. It's never 4 tips and tricks. It's always 5 or 7. But
and there's always a bonus. Yeah. There's almost always a bonus tip of like, ooh, I gotcha.
That's where they had the even number ones.
Yeah, exactly.
But like if you do things with purpose and if you know why you're doing something, and I think also if you can, while you're in the field, spot a potential issue with a composition, and while in the field, figure out what it takes in order to resolve that, whether it's perhaps moving the camera a little bit to the left or right or up or down or whatever it takes to resolve that particular conflict. I think that's when you achieve a different level of thought when it comes into the compositions, which also leads to having basically no regrets after the fact. And you don't have to crop something after the fact because you failed to notice something. So I think that's also where it's really nice when you have time to work that composition and troubleshoot it, because there's nothing that's going to be perfect. There's no perfect composition. And I think that's also why I enjoy the process of composition, because it is very much a negotiation and you just kind of figure out the best solution. But again, it's when you do that with purpose, I think that is, that it's a sign that you're growing very much as a photographer.
Yeah. Couldn't have said it better myself.
I hope you enjoyed our creative banter. You can learn more about Cody's work by visiting his website, codyschultz.com. And you can find my work at benhorn.com. For further discussion, join us at patreon.com/creativebanter. It's a place where we can interact with you, the listener. And although we greatly appreciate those who contribute by joining a tier, discussions are open to everyone, whether you're a paying member or not. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you around next time.